Well, guys, it's my last day, and we're gonna party. Today, we're gonna solve all of the world's most enduring mysteries, like why are the McDonald's ice cream machines always broken? Is the CIA recruiting an army of telepathic autists? Why is a pizza shop owner one of the most influential men in Washington, D.C.? Why was Oprah's friend running a secret human breeding center in South America? And what does Jake Tapper have to do with LA burning to the ground right now? Today, we're cranking the sass to 11 and going out with a bang. I haven't managed to get Candace canceled off YouTube yet, so I figured I'd give it one last shot before we go. I hope you're ready to party. Welcome back to Candace. Well, it's riot season again, folks. And as usual, LA is burning. But this year, I don't think it's a fad. I think it's the feds. And I think they have a bigger game to play than the usual temporary distraction and division to stoke hatred between the left and the right. I think there's a bigger game afoot this time. Because this time, they are manufacturing consent. And in many ways, they're manufacturing consent for what may turn out to be the biggest operation of our lifetimes. We are about to pass a point of technological no return. And depending on who crosses that line first, it'll wind up shaping global events for the rest of our lives and beyond. It is an awful convenient coincidence that Palantir gets their home team in the White House, and then they immediately form a partnership to integrate their technology into all government databases just as these riots break out in LA. This is some serious 4D chess, and I tend to be pretty resistant to conspiracy theories that involve such broad and all-encompassing plots, but it's hard to come to terms with all of these coincidences. So today, I figured we'll just get out the heavy-duty tinfoil and turn the microwave on to full blast, because the conspiracy theorists have been right so many times at this point, I'm not sure how else to explain what's happening. Because what's happening is they have this great new AI super surveillance technology that they really want to deploy on the peasants. But these pesky Americans are always so concerned with their rights and their freedom. How on earth are they going to get everyone to accept Palantir flavored digital oppression? Well, have you considered not deploying digital mass surveillance technology in the land of the free? Yeah, that's a hard no. Because you really can't float the 15-minute cities thing that they've got planned without the surveillance stuff. And plus, there's really not enough to go around for all the peasants once you account for the oligarchs' private islands and yachts and McMansions on the coast. So they're gonna need some sort of crowd control. Because honestly, wealth has never been less equally distributed in the history of humanity. And it's pretty dang cool for all the kid diddlers and private jet owners. So, anyways, they need the peasants to get down with the mass digital surveillance. You're going to let Peter Thiel watch you pee, and you're going to like it. In fact, it's going to be your idea. You're going to ask for it. Maybe not you specifically, but you get what I mean. So how are they going to get regular people to ask to have their rights and privacy taken away? Well, the same way that they sell the public on all the rest of the worst ideas of the last 100 years. Obviously, create a problem and let it get so bad that you beg for a solution. Oh, look, illegal immigrants. Pay no attention to how they got here, who let them in, or all the perfectly workable solutions that we already have for this problem. Have you tried Palantir? It's totally safe and effective, only ever used to target terrorists. Oh, wait, that was the Patriot Act. Only ever used to target illegal immigrants. Trust them. They would never use it on regular American citizens. Promise. They're the deep state. They would never lie to you. Except for that one time when they sort of manufactured a bioweapon and then it just so happened to escape from their lab in an election year, which kind of forced the whole country to do paper ballots. Or that other time when, for the first and only time in history, minor structural damage and fires caused two of the biggest skyscrapers in the world to collapse into their own footprints and pulverize all of their concrete on the way down. But they figured they better clear all the wreckage away immediately before any investigation could take place, because they knew that it was just too emotional for Americans to see all that evidence, trauma, for even one extra second. It's a good thing their Israeli buddies managed to pass off the video camera they were using to, quote, document the attacks before they got caught by police, because it would have been pretty awkward if they'd been caught with explosive residue in their van, cameras full of photos celebrating before, during, and after the attack, and video footage with audio of those idiots giving away the whole plan. So here's just a short clip to wet your whistle if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about.
It began when this woman was watching the Twin Towers burning from her apartment in New Jersey. She noticed 3 men on top of a van, posing for pictures with the towers burning in the background.
And I could see that they were like happy. You know, they didn't look shocked to me. You know, they didn't look shocked. I thought it was very strange.
The witness called police, who stopped the van hours later and arrested 5 men. All 5, it turns out, were Israeli. They were turned over to the FBI. Sources tell ABC News during a check of national security databases, some of the men were listed as having had connections with Israeli intelligence. At the FBI, that set off alarm bells. The FBI needed the answers to 3 important questions. Who were these men? What brought them to that parking lot on the morning of September 11th? And did they have any advance knowledge of what was going to happen that day? They said they worked for a company called Urban Moving. The FBI obtained a search warrant for the company's offices.
2 SUVs were filled up with between 9 and 12 boxes and computers.
Not long after the arrests, the offices of Urban Moving were simply abandoned. Almost everything was left behind.
Weird. Then, later, after being held for a long time, all those Israelis that were being investigated got deported. And once they got deported to Israel, they had the bright idea to go on Israeli TV and say this out loud to the whole world.
And at that point, we were taken for another round of questioning, this time related to our allegedly being members of Mossad. The fact of the matter is, we are coming from a country that experiences terror daily. Our purpose was to document the event.
Our purpose was to document the event. Man, you'd think that America would have wanted some answers. But honestly, the masses are easy to control. They managed to parlay the fallout from 9/11 into 2 official wars, and Lord knows how many covert ones around the globe. Plus, they did a little opioid epidemic on the side. You see, it's always more than one game at a time because there's always more than one set of evil interests working together to make these plans possible. Like the Kennedy assassination, for example. It's so confusing and has confounded so many for so long because so many powerful and evil people wanted him dead, and they mostly all played a role. The CIA saw him rightly as an existential threat. Dulles just hated him personally. The oil tycoon's profits were in jeopardy. Israel's nuclear and lobbying programs were threatened. The mob and mafia were double-crossed by him, and his brother Bobby was coming for him. LBJ was likely going to prison if he didn't do something fast, and honestly, it's harder to find people that didn't want Jack dead than people that did. And they all played small and large roles contributing to that plot. That's how the biggest capital C conspiracies go. Take your pick, whether it's JFK, 9/11, COVID, or the Federal Reserve. Even the most basic read into any of these big ones, and it's pretty obvious that they are conspiracies. In fact, with JFK and the Fed, the official narrative is now that they were conspiracies. But they were just little ones. No big deals. All they did was plunge America and the entire world into a century of poverty and despair, you know? But conspiracies happen on even the seemingly smallest of scales. Like, do you know about the McDonald's ice cream machine conspiracy? Because the McDonald's ice cream machines are famous for being broken. It got to be such a problem that it became a meme, and someone made a whole website that tracked and scraped the data from all over the country and live reports it at any given time, all the McDonald's ice cream machines that are down in any given area in the whole United States. It's called McBroken.com, and it's wild. And that in itself is pretty funny. But especially then when you learn that Taylor, the company that makes all the equipment for McDonald's, they also manufacture the ice cream machines for several other chains, like Wendy's, for example, where the ice cream machines never seem to be down. And that's foreshadowing. Because It was a huge problem for McDonald's franchisees, the people who actually own the individual McDonald's, because they're required to use Taylor machines. That's the company, right? But the machines are horrible and they're impossible to fix on your own. And so every time it breaks, you have to call a technician from Taylor to come out and plug their special computer in to fix it for you. And it's a whole thing. So then, a couple dudes came up with a solution and founded a company called Kitsch. They had invented a technology that plugs into the Taylor machine and has a special computer built in to let franchisees fix the machines on their own. And we know all about these crazy details because Kitsch eventually filed a lawsuit that is wild to read. People from Taylor tried to infiltrate their trials while they were beta testing this technology, and they did it in 3 different ways. First, by asking to participate directly, then by asking under pseudonyms, then hiring private investigators to join the trials, and then eventually they got a McDonald's franchisee to join the trial on their behalf. As soon as they got their hands on one of these Kitsch machines, it went offline and stopped communicating data to Kitsch headquarters, and it later came out in court that they had been running the machine disconnected from the internet nonstop to presumably reverse engineer the technology. Around the same time, McDonald's HQ sent out a memo warning all the franchisees not to use the Kitsch software, or they would void their warranties and might be liable for legal penalties. Just a few months later, a new company called Powerhouse Dynamics came out with a product identical to Kitsch. And when the Kitsch team looked into it, they discovered that the new company was owned by none other than Middleby, the parent company of Taylor, the ice cream machine company. This case is still being litigated. I presume Kitsch is learning what Tiffany Cianci learned the hard way about lawfare and being bled dry by private equity and megacorporations with endless legal battles. But they discovered that Taylor, the company making these broken ice cream machines, took at least a quarter of their revenue from repairing the machines, not from selling working ones in the first place. Their whole business model relied on selling faulty machines that were constantly in need of repair. And then it came out in further discovery that the executives at Middleby, Taylor, and McDonald's had been colluding to kill the Kitsch software because they were in on the broken ice cream machine scam altogether to some degree. It was literally a corporate conspiracy theory over the most mundane thing ever, McFlurries, which aren't even that good. They don't even turn it upside down when they hand it to you. And it was right there in the email correspondence, plain as day. The executives at Middleby asking McDonald's HQ to help them kill Kitsch. And to this day, it's still in court. They might yet get their way. McDonald's ice cream machines are still broken all over the country. McBroken still tracks them. Kitsch is still fighting an endless legal battle over the theft of their intellectual property and corporate collusion to kill their company. A company that would have helped enrich this great nation with ice cream. They were just trying to give the people what they wanted. This is real life. The McDonald's ice cream conspiracy is not a meme. It's a real life corporate conspiracy. The more you read history, honestly, the more you see conspiracies, not literally everywhere, but it sounds more spooky if you just say everywhere. Like the business plot, for example. If you don't know about that one time when George Bush's grandpa tried to do a Nazi military coup and overthrow the American government in the 1930s by force, I'm going to tell you about it right after I tell you about our sponsor. Now I want to tell you about American financing. Is now a good time to buy a home? The answer is absolutely yes. We are in a buyer's market, and if you've been sitting on the sidelines, you need to call American Financing today. The first step to getting a home is getting the right loan, and they can pre-approve you in 24 hours or less. There are more houses on the market today than there have ever been in the last 5 years. Interest rates are competitive, and home prices have been stable. That means you can find a great deal while locking in a monthly payment that fits your budget. Plus, with home equity building over time, your investment grows, making home ownership a smart long-term financial decision. If you continue to pay rent, you're just paying your landlord's mortgage. And you don't need 20% down. You could be in your new home with as little as 3% down. Plus, there are down payment assistance programs to make home ownership even easier. Don't wait any longer. Call American Financing today. 800-795-1210. That's 800-795-1210. Or visit americanfinancing.net/Owens. And now I want to tell you about CBDistillery. CBDistillery's stock-up sale is officially live. Save up to 40% on everything when you use promo code RUMBLE at checkout. If you're struggling to sleep, dealing with daily stress, or need relief after a tough workout, you have to check out CBDistillery. They've got natural plant-based solutions for just about everything. This isn't the low-quality stuff you find at the drugstore. This is premium CBD people swear by. I know a lot of you love CBDistillery's products. They offer relief in a variety of ways. Members of my team love their isolate CBD relief stick to target specific pain points. They make it so easy to find exactly what you need. You can shop by benefit, sleep, stress, mood and focus, pain after workouts. They even have a solution for pets. Whether CBDistillery is already part of your routine or you've been curious about trying CBD, now's the time to stock up and save up to 40% off. Discover the healing benefits of CBD and save up to 40% on everything. Visit CBDistillery.com and enter code RUMBLE. That's CBDistillery.com, code RUMBLE. CBDistillery.com, not available in Idaho, Iowa, and South Dakota. So anyways, that one time when Grandpa Bush tried to overthrow the government, you should really look into it. It's well-documented, official mainstream history. It even has a whole Wikipedia page. Open conspiracy by a bunch of America's wealthiest Nazi-sympathizing business tycoons to turn America into a fascist dictatorship. And it was probably only stopped because one man, Smedley Butler, stood up to them and stopped it. That's crazy. The entire fate of the human race hinged on that single man's decision to preserve the American way of life. Or at least the American ideal, right? Because everything gets even crazier when you learn how many American and European businessmen were funding Adolf Hitler's rise to power and profiting off of supplying the Nazi war machine throughout basically all of World War II. The Nazi army blitzkrieged over France in Ford trucks and using Ford tanks. They supplied their army with trains running on American-made rail lines. They drank American Coca-Cola to cool off after a hard day's warring. In fact, after World War II, Ford actually sued the U.S. government for bombing their Nazi tank factory during the war, and they won. General Motors did as well. That's a real story. Although it's hard to dig up, you can find it. Because, you see, us regular folk live such regular lives that this kind of stuff is so far beyond our imaginations, it sounds like fiction. It sounds like Hollywood. You know, Hollywood, that place that was founded by a bunch of Jewish dudes in direct partnership with the mob that only a crazy person would have ever thought was run by pedophiles, because it's obviously not. At least until 2016, when that crazy pizza conspiracy flooded the internet with totally fake news about the Clintons and America's most powerful political elite. We all started to suspect that Hollywood had some weird secrets. But then, a totally not government agent went storming into a pizza shop with a rifle for a photo op and fired one bullet that missed everyone inside but managed to go through a door and then straight down through the top of the pizza shop's computer, frying its hard drive. When he was arrested, he declared that Alex Jones had lied to him, and the case was closed by Media Matters. You're all conspiracy theorists. Oh, by the way, he was later killed during a routine traffic stop, apparently. Kind of a weird coincidence. Pay no attention to the fact that Media Matters was owned by the boyfriend of the dude who owned the weird satanic pizza shop that the Podestas like to throw parties at. Pay no attention to the fact that GQ magazine, for some reason, named the owner of a DC pizza shop one of the most influential men in Washington. Not weird at all. Also, the spirit cooking witch that hangs around Hollywood and political elites mixing blood and semen and urine and Lord knows what. It's just art. Okay. Then she turns up down in South America promoting John of God, Oprah's guru buddy, who also had this super awkward breeding farm hidden down there where he was breeding children for, never mind. You can go back and read that text that was on the screen if you want to know more, because it's super dark. Because the fact remains, you were just a conspiracy theorist. Hollywood was the picture of righteousness and virtue, and they were busy telling you to save the planet by eating fake meat and sipping oat milk lattes with paper straws while they toured the world in their private jets. And then Jeffrey Epstein got arrested, and it turned out that Hollywood is full of pedos. He was being invited to all their parties by one of the most powerful women in Hollywood, Peggy Segal. She was famous for her contact book of 30,000 of the most influential people in the world that she would invite to parties to make these guys feel important and to convince the peasants to buy their movies. Don't look too closely at Woody Allen's wife. Or the foot logo for Nickelodeon, which turned out to be linked to some weird foot stuff. But, Dan Schneider just denied all that and started suing. So I just want to be really clear, Dan Schneider is a normal dude, and those were just wild allegations, okay? And we would have known a lot more about all the shady underbelly of Hollywood a whole lot sooner if Avicii and Michael Jackson, Anthony Bourdain and Prodigy and a whole bunch of others hadn't all just died suddenly. I mean, it turns out that going against the grain in Hollywood is a really accident-prone industry. I mean, Prodigy literally choked on an egg. Grown-ass man choked on an egg and died. That's the real story. That's the story that we're going with. Pay no attention to what he was talking about right before that. And you see, even now that Diddy is on trial, even after Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself, even after John of God went down and the Nickelodeon feet guy went down and Abercrombie and Fitch was a giant gay trafficking operation, you're still a conspiracy theorist if you read about it. There's still an aversion to looking back at all the other odd coincidences and saying, maybe those guys were onto something. And by now, we all know that's because an awful lot of people in the quote mainstream are in on it. They're in on the scam. Whether they're actually doing skull and bones rituals and diddling kids or just getting rich off of looking the other way, an awful lot of them are in on it. I mean, seriously, on the skull and bones thing, this is one of the oldest secret societies in America. I went through a whole list of the power players that have come through their halls in my episode about J.D. Vance just recently. The initiation ritual is rumored, just rumored, to involve getting in a coffin while other men do gay stuff to you. And I know, it sounds crazy, especially when you realize that the 2000 U.S. presidential election featured two bonesmen from the same class facing off against each other. What a weird coincidence. I really hope that the rumors about that initiation ritual aren't true, because that's just embarrassing for our whole country. It's almost as embarrassing as Joe Biden being the president for 4 years. But the mainstream media had no idea. How could they have known he was a vegetable? I mean, really, when you think about it, who even asked tougher questions than Jake Tapper? Did anyone else cover the story of Biden's mental decline as hard as Jake Tapper? Just such a legendary journalist. I mean, where would we be without him? Here is Jake Tapper talking about the whole situation back in 2020 with Laura Trump, just straight shooting.
Every time he comes on stage or they turn to him, I'm like, Joe, can you get it out? Let's get the words out, Joe. You kind of feel bad for him.
How do you think it makes little kids with stutters feel when they see you make a comment like that?
First and foremost, I had no idea that Joe Biden ever suffered from a stutter. I think what we see on stage with Joe Biden, Jake, is very clearly a cognitive decline.
Okay.
That's what I'm referring to. It makes me uncomfortable
you have
to watch somebody on stage search for
that's so amazing.
questions
It's so amazing to me
and try and figure out an answer.
A cognitive decline.
Well, when you're trying to tell me that what I was suggesting was
I think that you were mocking his stutter.
Yeah,
I think you were mocking his stutter, and I think you have absolutely no standing to diagnose somebody's cognitive decline. I would think that somebody in the Trump family would be more sensitive to people who do not have medical licenses diagnosing politicians from afar. Plenty of people have diagnosed your father from afar, and I'm sure it offends you. Your father-in-law from afar. I'm sure it offends you. You don't have any standing to say.
I'm not diagnosing him. What I'm saying, Jake,
you just talked
is
about
that
a cognitive decline.
That Joe Biden
I have
is
one last
struggling
question for you, Laura. You can't
times on stage, and it's very concerning to a lot of people that this could be the leader of the free world.
Okay.
That is all I'm saying. I genuinely feel sorry for Joe Biden.
I appreciate it.
That is so uncomfortable to watch. Holy moly, bro. Wow. Thanks for the heavy-hitting journalism and accountability, Jake Tapper, because here he is this year plugging his book, Original Sin.
Alex Thompson of Axios and I have spent the last several months talking to more than 200 insiders and officials and donors and activists, more willing to talk post-election, of course, to explain the last couple of years in politics and how we as a nation got here with never-before-heard stories from behind the scenes. You will not believe what was really going on. You can pre-order the book at originalsinbook.com. originalsinbook.com.
You're really never going to believe what was going on. Have you heard? Joe Biden was in mental decline and no one even told us. Who was hiding this crazy conspiracy from Jake Tapper? It's unbelievable. Buy his book. He'll tell you all about it. That's like, how do you even Put that on the shelves at Barnes & Noble and live with yourself, Jake. We have the internet. So, anyways, where were we? That's right. Manufacturing consent for Palantir and World War III. Because you see, there's this famous Google keyword trend. If you look at when the words racist and homophobe and all these other woke words skyrocketed into our national lexicon, it was coincidentally just a coincidence, right when Occupy Wall Street started taking off and gaining traction. And therein lies the capital T truth. The bankers have always been at the top of the pyramid because the money has always been the foundation upon which all of society is built. And the base layer of every conspiracy, every power structure, every world-changing event, it all comes back to money. Kennedy started printing United States notes. Dead. Back to Federal Reserve notes, thank you very much. Hitler, among many other crazy ideas, kicked the European central bankers out. That was never part of the plan. Dead. Muammar Gaddafi, gold-backed currency. Dead. Occupy Wall Street, holding the banks accountable for their crimes. Well, they couldn't exactly just dead thousands of regular Americans all around the country, but conveniently they didn't have to. There's more than one way to skin a threat to global financial domination. And one of the best ways is to divide people with culture wars and get them to just fight each other. Divide and rule. It's a tale as old as time. If the people need an enemy, they will provide one. And sometimes that means providing a boogeyman, like the Nazis or the commies or the terrorists or the immigrants. This is especially effective because all of these groups are actual threats. They are actually our enemies in an immediately understandable way. But they are not exactly the enemies of our overlords. In fact, they are often created by our overlords to fulfill this exact role. Just look up the Mujahideen. Ask Google a couple hard questions about who funds ISIS. Toot around on Twitter looking for info on who funded all the illegal immigration, and you'll see your pattern again. And in between all the big bad boogeymen, it never hurts to have a couple extra things to squabble about. Plenty of things people disagree on that they can easily be encouraged to fight over, like red versus blue, or gay versus straight, or white versus black. Just whatever you do, pay no attention to the Federal Reserve, which is not federal and has no reserves. Just don't talk about the bankers funding both sides of every war. Definitely don't get too curious about what started each war, or you might wind up sounding like Patrick Clausen, a senior fellow and research counselor at the Washington Institute. Here he is, responding to questions regarding U.S. policy towards Iran at a policy forum in Washington, D.C., all the way back in 2012.
I frankly think that crisis initiation is really tough. And it's very hard for me to see how the United States...
Crisis initiation is tough.
President can get us to war with Iran. Which leads me to conclude that if, in fact, compromise is not coming, that the traditional way of America gets to war is what would be best for U.S. interests. Some people might think that Mr. Roosevelt wanted to get us into World War II, as David mentioned. You may recall we had to wait for Pearl Harbor. Some people might think Mr. Wilson wanted to get us into World War I. You may recall he had to wait for the Lusitania episode. Some people might think that Mr. Johnson wanted to send troops to Vietnam. You may recall we had to wait for the Gulf of Tonkin episode. We didn't go to war with Spain until the until the Maine exploded. And may I point out that Mr. Lincoln did not feel he could call out the Federal Army until Fort Sumter was attacked, which is why he ordered the commander at Fort Sumter to do exactly that thing which the South Carolinians had said would cause an attack. So if, in fact, the Iranians aren't going to compromise, it would be best if somebody else started the war. One can combine other means of pressure with sanctions. I mentioned that explosion on August 17th. We could step up the pressure. I mean, look, people, Iranian submarines periodically go down. Someday one of them might not come up.
Wow.
Who would know why?
Who would know?
We can do a variety of things.
I think we would know why.
The pressure. I'm not advocating that, but I'm just suggesting that this is not a either-or proposition. Of, it's just sanctions has to succeed or other things. We are in the game of using covert means against the Iranians. We could get nastier at that.
I mean, I'm not advocating for false flag attacks, but look at how great all these other false flag attacks worked at getting us into global warfare. Like, I'm not advocating for it. I'm just saying that it would be worth advocating for if someone wanted to do it, because that guy actually works for them. He's one of them. This video was recorded in 2012. That is how long they've been wanting to go to war with Iran. And I think he's dumb enough to actually believe himself. He actually has the deep state's hand so far up his, well, you've seen the Muppets, that he doesn't even realize that half the things that he just listed are well-known false flags. And the other half only take a small amount of research to figure out what was really going on. But honestly, bro was ahead of his time. Because now, 13 years later, it is finally officially false flag season. They're stretching the terrorist puppet show about as far as it can go. And Israel has made a real bungle of support for that whole genre, so it's about time for either a new boom boom or a new bad guy. And my guess is both. We've already met the new bad guy. Immigrants are kind of the ultimate chess move on their part because it combines the culture war with the proxy war, and it brings it to the home turf. In a nation of immigrants, what political genius to get everyone fighting over immigration. It's both a very real and catastrophic threat when taken to the extreme that it has already gone to, and yet it is also the foundational principle of this country that was at every stage of its history a nation of foreigners taking people's land. Like, honestly, you gotta hand it to them. It's a pretty aces move. And we are definitely in for a messed up decade or 2 or 10, I don't know. But one thing I do know is that illegal immigrants aren't going to get us to war with Iran. And so the bankers, they really want war with Iran. So I genuinely worry that the next move on the board is a major terror attack of 9/11 magnitude or worse. I pray that they don't go nuclear. I pray that they just shrivel up and go to hell with Henry Kissinger. But I am afraid that there are too many evil people in this world, up to too many evil games. And as usual, we already see the stage set. The border has been open for far too long. Far too many unknown variables are already at play in America. Just about anything is possible at this point. And when you start to think about it all, it gets pretty dark and depressing pretty fast. So I want to lighten the mood and go somewhere totally different and a lot more fun. In a moment, we're going to talk about telepathy, the CIA, and a whole rabbit hole. But first, let me tell you about one of our sponsors, PDS Debt. The American dream is under attack, and hardworking patriots like you are being crushed under mountains of debt. Why? Because creditors love debt. They want you to be stuck in their high-interest trap. They want you drowning in student loans, credit card debt, and skyrocketing mortgage rates. Because when you're broke, you're controllable. So, what do? Take control. Fight back. And that starts with PDS Debt. They've helped hundreds of thousands of people live debt-free. PDS Debt goes beyond the numbers to understand your unique financial situation and craft a personalized plan designed just for you. There's no minimum credit score required. They're here to help you save more, pay off your debt faster, and start putting money back where it belongs, in your pocket. PDS Debt is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau, boasts thousands of 5-star reviews on Google, and holds a 5-star rating on Trustpilot. PDS has helped hundreds of thousands of people get out of debt. You're 30 seconds away from being debt-free. Get your free assessment and find the best option for you right now at pdsdebt.com/Candace. That's pdsdebt.com/Candace. pdsdebt.com/Candace. And so to finish us off for today, let's go all the way to left field for something completely different. The Telepathy Tapes. This is one of my absolute favorite digs right now, and everyone's going to feel all kinds of ways about it. If you haven't listened to the Telepathy Tapes yet, it's a podcast in 10 parts, and all I ask is that before passing judgments on the veracity of any of what we're about to talk about, just listen to them. Listen to them in order from 1 to 10. Come to your own conclusions. They're on YouTube in a playlist with the cute pink cassette tape. You can listen for free. They're not hard to find. And now, I'm going to do my best to summarize one of the main threads that they discuss. Nonverbal autistic kids seem to be telepathic. But most people probably misinterpret that sentence in just about every way possible, so let me explain. A certain portion of severely autistic children are nonverbal. These are the kids that uncontrollably bang their heads into walls and smear poop everywhere and rock back and forth and scream at the top of their lungs. Being a parent to one of these children is one of the hardest things a human could ever do. And for the longest time, mainstream science figured that there was just nobody inside there. Their brains were just not wired right. They must not have any intelligence since they can't even control their bodies. But then, in the 60s and 70s, a bunch of therapists realized that you could teach these kids and adults to use their gross motor skills to touch letters on a big letterboard and spell out words. They can't form words with the fine motor skills of their tongues or even type on a keyboard with the fine motor skills of their fingers, but with focus and training, they can learn to use these letterboards. Once they started teaching nonverbal autistic kids to use these letterboards, they realized that these kids not only had personalities and intelligence hidden inside these uncontrollable bodies, but they were actually smart. Like, really smart. Like, these kids were so smart, it defied all rational explanation. As the use of these letterboards became more and more widespread through the 70s and 80s and 90s, parents and therapists all around the country and world started all realizing in isolation that their nonverbal children were more than just smart. They were doing something not explainable by conventional science. They could do things like type out the entire Declaration of Independence word for word without stopping, with no errors, having never read or studied it as far as their parents knew. They could type out other classical literature too, like the Gettysburg Address. It took them forever, obviously, because they were using a letterboard, but they made it with no errors, word for word. Other kids could type in foreign languages they had never learned. Some of them could even read hieroglyphics and other ancient languages with no training. Almost all of these parents and therapists also had some version of realizing that these non-speakers, as they're referred to in the podcast, could read their minds. They knew this not only because the non-speakers would tell them directly that they could, but also because the non-speakers could demonstrate it with 100% accuracy over and over and over again, day after day, under basically any circumstances. And now, at this point, if you've never heard of the Telepathy Tapes, this is probably all a little much, and you're probably wondering where the hell I'm going with this and exactly when I lost my mind. Firstly, the Telepathy Tapes is following the work of a Johns Hopkins and Harvard-educated doctor named Diane Hennessy Powell. But she is far from alone in this research. And what makes this research and this series so interesting to me is actually not her credentials, but just the sheer scope of the phenomenon. We're talking about thousands of people reporting the same thing independently all across the US and beyond, people that have never spoken to or met one another. For decades, they all thought that they were the only ones because anytime they would mention it to someone, they would be called crazy. And parents of nonverbal autistic kids are already some of the most self-isolating people in society because it's really hard to raise a severely autistic child. So, for decades, thousands of families all discovered this in unison, all alone. But it gets crazier because it turns out that all the non-speakers can communicate with each other telepathically at any time. And they do, just about every day. They are able to demonstrate this at will by doing things like telling the podcast host things about another family on the other side of the country whom they have never met, being able to tell her things that are happening that day for other non-speakers far away. You really have to listen to the podcast to understand how weird and wild it all is. And there's a whole darker conspiracy theory that I've dug into before around how we suddenly have all these injections and simultaneously, but totally unrelated, we have this massive spike in autism, just as we're discovering that nonverbal autistic kids are telepathic and that something the CIA has always been a little curious about. That video is on my YouTube channel if you want to go further down this rabbit hole. But the reason I bring all this up is this. All, and I mean basically all, of these nonverbal kids talk about God. Some of them fit into this religion or that religion, but they all speak about God. And they all speak about accessing another realm where they're able to communicate with one another and where they're able to learn to speak in languages they've never learned and read documents that they've never read. And they speak to and are living evidence of something much bigger than all of us. And in every instance, these abilities that they have inside these bodies that they can't control are inextricably tied to love. When they're in a state of anxiety and fear, they are disconnected from this realm, from God, from whatever it is they're doing. When they're filled with love and happiness, they're able to do incredible, inexplicable things with 100% accuracy. And I'll let you listen to the podcast for yourself to make your own judgments about their veracity and what exactly is going on, because you really do have to judge it for yourself. But my point is this. Humanity is going through a seismic shift. The nature of being human is changing inside all of us very rapidly. And although there is so much evil in the world and so many reasons to be fearful and pessimistic and hopeless, that is a facade. Because God is in all of us, and the most powerful force in the universe springs from that part of us, not from Palantir's digital surveillance systems, not from political propaganda, fear-mongering us into war, not from divisive rhetoric, telling us to hate one another. Our shared humanity is far more powerful than any of the forces that would tear us apart. And I genuinely believe that God will win in this cosmic battle between good and evil. We are here to play our part, to do our best, to live and to love. And even though it seems dark some days, keep going, because good will always win. The truth will always win. God will always win. And I think that's where I'll leave you guys for now. That's our show. I'm going to read some of your comments in just a minute. But first, I wanted to thank you all just so much for being so warm and welcoming to me. I know that usually when you have a substitute, most times you just start shooting spitballs and passing notes and screwing off. But I put in everything I had to make all my episodes with you guys as fun and informative and important as I possibly could. And it meant so much to me for you guys to keep watching each week and to leave such kind comments. Like, really, I'm new at this whole game. I've been doing this for just over 2 years. And to step into the shoes of someone like Candace and try to come anywhere near the bar that she sets is super humbling. And it was the most fun challenge I could have ever set for myself. I learned so much and I'm so grateful to Candace and to the whole team. Thanks for taking me in, trusting me not to make a mess of things. So thank you all. I'd really appreciate it if you followed me on my channel over at Ian Carroll's show. There's a link in the description below because I just ordered a whole bunch of new equipment to level up my YouTube game with all the things I learned from Candace and her team. Just arrived today. I'll be microwaving more tinfoil over on my channel all year long. Also, quick update on Tiffany. Tiffany Cianci, I was able to sit down with her for an in-person interview, and I'll be posting that over on my channel hopefully next week. She is still in a legal battle with Unleashed Brands and Michael Browning Jr. She could desperately use your help and prayers. We'll put a link to her social media down below so you can follow along with her fight if you want to. I will be continuing to report on her story over the coming months. And lastly, I told you guys in one of my first episodes about how basically everything in the grocery store is owned by the same 3 companies. Well, those spreadsheets that I've been publishing for the last 2 years are finally becoming an app, which you can use to easily scan anything you buy and learn just who owns it and all sorts of other stuff too. I'm super stoked about it. It's going into beta testing this week. It's called Buyer, and it's going to be offered for free for the simple version and a couple bucks a month for the souped up enhanced AI version. You can follow along and sign up to get in on the next round of beta testing by going to buyerapp.com. I cannot wait for that. I'm going to use it mostly to try to find founder and family-owned brands hidden among all the mega corporate crap, but it's going to be customizable. We're not going to tell you how to use it. It's going to be able to find whatever you want to find. Super stoked. So now let's get to some of your guys' comments because, like I said, a Candace comment section is the best comment section. Insights, tinfoil, positivity. Y'all are the best. One Standard, One Truth said, "What I love about Ian and Candace is that they transcend the right-left dichotomy. They're just honest, rational, determined, and filled with good intentions. You're dang straight." And honestly, I think that more and more people in America are waking up to the fact that the left-right dichotomy is a scam. Whether it's because of what Trump is doing today or it's because of what Bush did back in the day, because it's what Biden did, we all come from our own places in the political spectrum. And ultimately you realize that they are playing us. They are playing us. And there's a banker behind the curtain. So between Ian and Candace, I will never trust another human being again. Seriously, though, I greatly appreciate all the work you guys do. Thank you. I also really like how there's certain people in this decentralized media space that have the right balance of humor and entertainment, but also objective standard for evidence and truth. And willingness to dig into the deep stories. Candace is such an inspiration because she's not afraid to go anywhere and look at anything, but she also has a high understanding of objective evidence. And she knows how to not get sued because you have to know how to find objective truth in order to avoid that. So Musa says, Candace and Ian have no idea how far they reach with this channel. You have a guy in South Africa who literally lives in a village who's experiencing power cuts, load shedding, as he types that never misses an episode. Started following Candace back in 2020, and I've been hooked ever since. May you keep exposing the truth while we keep you in our prayers. That is so wild. Like, actually, like, flat earthers, just put your beef aside for a second and just imagine a globe and imagine like how far of a flight it is, how far away that commenter is from this basement studio here. And just imagine all the other people all around the world. I love how the internet connects people that share like beliefs and ideas and culture essentially, but are from every different culture imaginable. Such a cool way to find your tribe. Ever since I've been doing this job, I have found my people all across the United States, all across the country. So stoked that you're here. Thanks for commenting too from South Africa. That's sick. As a massive Tolkien fan, the Palantir name is a huge red flag. Yeah. In The Lord of the Rings, the Palantir is the crazy ball that Saruman puts his hand on and he sees anything he wants to see. It's the all-seeing eye kind of thing. But it comes with this legend, this myth that the Palantir is all powerful. And the more you use it, the more it corrupts you to evil. And that's how Saruman, the white wizard, got turned evil and started working for the evil Lord Sauron. You're not up on your nerd history. It's pretty sketchy. They chose that name on purpose. So user KK812 says, this is real journalism. 10-year ban on AI laws is absolutely insane. Thank you. I want to point out, though, that this is part of journalism. This is the filter that brings you the news, but in a fun way. This is like opinion programming, honestly. This is like Rachel Maddow if it didn't suck and wasn't paid for by mega corporations, or like John Oliver if, he didn't sell out to corporate interests at a certain point. But it's not the whole picture of journalism, because people like Candace and myself, we rely oftentimes on like the muckrakers and the hardcore, like the journalists that are actually sourcing stories, getting leaks, getting leads. It's a whole network of decentralized information. And I rely very heavily on all these other people doing all the hard work, more on the ground. So always remember that though you often will only see people like us in on the screen getting the attention, it's important to remember to support and shine a light on all the other journalists that are actually helping to filter all the information in for all of us to benefit from. Erica Taylor said, man, this stuff is getting so scary. I would love Ian and Candace to do episodes on what they do to protect their kids from the chemicals and what their plan is if those AI things take off. Help us, Candace and Ian. You're our only hope. Fortunately for me, unfortunately for you, I don't have kids yet, although I'm already big time thinking about what to do to protect them. And for me, one of the biggest things is what state you live in and what laws you're subject to, because the state regulations matter so much when it comes to what's allowed to be in your food, what's in your grocery stores, what they can do to your kids in school, what you can do to retaliate if they do something to your kids, just all of it. What state you live in really matters. But beyond that, the ultimate thing is that the unfortunate truth is that it's up to you. If you aren't educated on it, if you don't deeply understand it, like, people like us can help get you started, but you got to research it for yourself because these are your kids. You have to be in charge of understanding what's best for them, what's safe for them, what, legal rights you do and don't have in your state around them. Because if you don't understand that, you are ultimately vulnerable. And, sometimes that's acceptable, but when it comes to your kids, it's just not, honestly. So Stacy Bird says, I'm a dietitian that worked at a hospital located off a highway. One thing the truckers tend to suffer from is a plethora of GI issues. IBS would be the least of their issues, to fistulas, intestines sticking together, to bowel cancer. This is due to the amount of time they spend sitting and then on-the-go diet that they consume to do their jobs in a timely fashion. They literally give their lives to provide us goods. So true. That trucking episode totally changed my perspective on truckers, on highways, on everything I buy from the grocery store. And I find myself like pulling back for truckers, giving them space to merge, flashing my lights to tell them I see them. And it's like, I just have so much more respect for them now and so much more empathy for what they go through, because not only are they getting paid like often slave wages, but also they are giving their health, their humanity, their happiness, their whole livelihood to it. Like they live on the road in those trucks. There were a lot of truckers that commented about how there's certain ways in the industry, like to get the right job that pays, properly. But the long haul industry is crazy. Definitely go check that episode out. Cloud Tribe says, good timing. I can say as someone who worked in Canadian trucking, it doesn't make sense that the people who are the literal backbone of any society live so miserably. Everything physical was brought here by a truck, plane, train, or boat, and cities would starve to death within a couple months without truckers. Yeah, you're dang straight. And like, I don't know. It's crazy how tied together the world is. And episodes like that trucking episode, they really get me thinking through the complexity of every issue, because when you look at an issue in isolation, it's easy to think, oh, big problem, here's a solution. But it's so tied into the supply chain and tied into our own demand for goods at cheaper prices, tied into the deregulation of the industry, tied into the union industry. It's so complicated. And ultimately, unfortunately, it's all driven by incentives, and it's all driven by our desire to have more for less, always. More stuff, cheaper, more comfort, more everything all the time. It's like this American dream that is just this monster consuming all of us until we are the consumed product itself, and until we're sacrificing our men and women in these trucks, in these like essentially prison labor camps, in all these industries. It's really sad. And that book that I was reading from, that Benjamin Lore book, it paints it in such an incredible picture. Highly recommend that book. And I guess that's our last comment. That's it. I don't want to leave you guys. Aw. Well, I guess that's our show for today. My last show for you. Thank you so much again for hanging out and having a good time. Be sure to like the video, leave a comment, and share it with all of your most brainwashed friends on your way out. I'm sure they'll love it. Drink your water, do something nice for someone, and tell your family you love them. Good night.